Well, good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on what part of the country you're joining us from. Welcome to our Maximizing Your Membership webinar. And this is part of the webinar series that started during COVID, and where we bring you the most relevant intelligence that's important for your business. And today we're going to focus on economic conditions, credit card advocacy, and labor shortages. We joke that we're in season 2, episode 1. Season 1 was the COVID season, so that was filled with lots of drama, and not everyone's favorite season. Although I know the webinars were many people gave us positive feedback on the webinars. We're episode 1, so this is our first episode in 2023. So welcome if you are new to these webinars. We're really pleased to have you, and for those of you who are returning, very nice to connect with you again. As you know, this is one of the favorite things that we do. I'm Laura Jones. I'm going to be your host along with my colleagues, my amazing colleagues, who I'll introduce now. So we've got in the house, if we go to the next slide, I'll introduce Corinne, who many of you who have joined us before are very familiar with Corinne. She's in Ottawa. And Jocelyn, you want to wave your... Jocelyn's one of our amazing counselors who answers calls from business owners, and many of our members know this, but we take about between 40 and 60,000 calls from business owners right across Canada every year. So we get a lot of intelligence and grassroots understanding of what the big issues are facing businesses. And Stephanie, who is also in the house today. And Stephanie, I see you're in your Toronto office today, Stephanie. And Stephanie is our Vice President of Partnerships. So together, we're going to tackle today's topic. We're going to get to as many of your questions as we can as we go along, which is my cue to tell you that there's the Q&A right at the bottom there. And so if you have questions for the presenters, please put them in the Q&A, and we are very casual. We will take as many as we can as we go. And then there's also a chat function, and I see many of you are already been putting where you're from. And so the chat function is for the whole group to interact and talk to each other. And so I see we've got New Brunswick in the house, we've got Guelph, we've got Manitoba. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see that, well, this is the agenda, which I've already talked about. So we're going to talk about economic challenges, but this slide shows you, as you're just putting your where you're from, you see that you are part of a big community when you join in on these webinars. And we've got business owners from coast to coast to coast who are members of CFIB. We're almost back to our 100,000 business owner mark. And of course, that gives us a lot of scale and ability to understand what's going on with the small business community. We're also very grassroots, which we're proud of. We represent sectors, retail, hospitality, manufacturing, independent fishermen, construction. You name it, we've got it in our membership. So we're very broad, and nice to have everyone here with us today. What else do I want to tell you by way of introduction? If we go to the next slide, we do 3 things just quickly. Our members who've been with us for a while know this, but we may have some new members, and please let us know if you're new. We always love to welcome our newbies. We do 3 things for businesses. We advocate in the halls of power, not just Ottawa, although that's Parliament Hill, nice picture of Parliament Hill, but we also go to City Hall, and we do a lot of provincial advocacy as well. Advice, I just talked about our helpline, taking 40 to 60,000 calls, and we also provide a lot of great tips, which you can get through our member exclusive area of our website called our portal, and our savings, so those great discounts that we're able to negotiate. And lots of new members. Oh, we love you. We love you all, and we love our new members. Welcome. You've joined, I think, a really great community of business owners who recognize the importance of having a voice. So we always like to start with a bit of humor, and today we're going to go through economic conditions and credit cards and labor. So I think we need a little bit of humor, although there's not a lot that's really that funny about inflation, of course, but we're going to start with a bit of humor. We know that COVID was obviously very, very difficult, one of the most stressful periods that most business owners have ever been through. And then coming out of COVID, inflation is that other shoe that is dropping. For the period prior to inflation, and for many decades since the last big inflationary period in the 70s, inflation was fairly low and stable. Bank of Canada sets a target of 2%, so they want to be in the range of 1 to 3%. And if you look at graphs, old graphs, you'll see that inflation was bumping along at that within that band. And that was right through until we started to come out of COVID, when a number of factors conspired to create inflation. One was there was a lot of pent-up consumer demand, and then you had supply chain challenges, so it was harder to meet that demand, and you had labor constraints, which is partly demographic, what's going on with labor, and then also COVID changed some thinking within employees about where and how much and all of that with working conditions. The biggest factor is demographic, obviously. So labor was there, and then of course the war in the Ukraine, and we end up with instead of the dollar store, the $10 store, and of course I'm not going to spend too much time on why and how this comes, but we don't like inflation because when prices aren't stable, people feel that, and that our real incomes go down because wage increases tend to lag price increases, so people feel poor and then they're not spending as much, which affects businesses, and they feel this like it's not the dollar store anymore, it's the $10 store. So there's a bit of good news here. I'm going to go to the next slide. And for those of you who may have joined in the fall, our presentation with our chief economist, who's great, we'll get him to do another webinar soon. But he indicated in the fall that based on data that we collect from you, and we collect a lot of data from you, that your expectations about wages and prices have started to come down, and you tend to be a great source. The aggregate you tends to be a great source of intelligence. This also mirrors what the Bank of Canada is expecting. They're expecting that we've hit that high water mark on inflation, and that while prices and wage increases are higher than they have been historically, which you can see on this graph with that big spike after we came out of COVID, that things are starting to come down. So that's a little bit of good news. I don't put a ton of stock in economic forecasts because they tend to not be that accurate, but I will say that your data and your expectations are very accurate, and that's why the Bank of Canada and other finance ministers across the country love to get these data. So I wanted to share that back with you in terms of the latest and what we are expecting. So I think that we'll go next to next, we've got our small business dashboard. And so we've got, these are our latest numbers on this. 58% of you are still with pandemic debt. And I'm going to bring Corinne up in a minute to talk about, because I know we had a lot of questions about CFIB loans. And so I want to talk about the debt portion. We also know that you're below normal sales. And this relates back to inflation in the sense that you're telling us not only are there fewer customers, but one of the big challenges that individual customers are tending to spend less than they did before. And that, again, I think inflation is a big part of that. And then we have a slightly higher than normal number still considering permanent closure of the business. But Corinne, I wanted to bring you up because we had a lot of, I'm going to turn things over to you anyway in a minute, but we had a lot of questions about the CFIB loans and when they're due. And I know we've got businesses in different situations. Do you want to just give a little update on CFIB?
Sure. So yeah, I know there's a lot of folks who are asking about whether the deadline, which is currently set for the end of this year, will be extended yet another year to 2024. There is no new information on that at this point in time. However, we are raising this at every opportunity. We have probably had in the vicinity of 70 to 75 meetings with government over the course of the last 2 or 3 months. We probably have another 25 to go before we hit budget, which is usually at the end of March. This is raised in every single meeting. It's the very first thing we talk about is how this pandemic debt is still weighing on so many small businesses, and that they can at least consider extending the deadline for another year to the end of 24. We generally get I wouldn't say that people are like, yeah, we're going to do that right away, but I think there is some empathy to this idea. It's just whether the people who actually make those decisions are actually going to go down that road is one that we don't know at this point in time. My sense is this government, if they're going to go down that path, are not going to probably do anything until later in the year, partly because they're going to want to see how the economy unfolds as the year goes on. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they do something around this, which is a possibility. It's not completely out of the realm of possibility at all. It may not happen until the fall, which is not great when you're trying to make plans for what are you going to do over the next little while. So we're going to continue to put pressure on them to make that announcement if they're going to do it early as possible, pushing them to do something, obviously. So yeah, that continues to be high on our radar. It is definitely an active issue as we speak. We're also pushing for an extension of the forgivable portion, or looking at the hardest hit areas or something, because we know some of you, you're really in a difficult situation because you may be in a sector that was extremely hard hit and may not have fully recovered yet. So there are different ways that we're looking at it, but for sure that extension is one that is high on our priority to try to get government to do.
So to get the forgivable portion, just to sum up, you've got to pay back by December 23rd, sorry, 2023 of this year, as of right now. But we are pushing very hard to get that extended, and we were successful at getting it extended before, because I think it was prior to that, it was
end of last year,
2022. Yeah. So we're pushing hard, but not likely. I know you're like me, Corinne. You don't like to forecast, but if we had to place a bet, we'd be betting that if that's going to happen, it's going to happen in the fall. And one thing you can count on is that we will be pushing hard, and Corinne and her team and others are raising it in every single meeting. So we're aware of the stress around the debt. We do have some members in the position where they can pay it back now, and they're waiting because they're just earning a little bit of interest on that money, or using it for other things, which from a financial perspective makes sense. And then if you're not able to pay back the debt by December 2023, Corinne, do you just want to run through what happens then in that scenario?
Yeah, so if they keep that deadline at the end of this year and you're not able to pay it back in full, you will lose the forgivable portion. And that loan will become a term loan with the bank, and it will convert, and it'll become a 2-year loan, of which you'll start paying interest at 5%, and you'll have to pay it back by the end of 2025. So you'll have 2 extra years to do that. So that is what will happen under the current rules as we know them.
So 2 extra years, but you'll be paying interest.
And no forgivable, you'll have to pay the full thing.
No forgivable portion, right? So that's not a great, so refinancing that is probably a better option if you can, and then paying it back is probably a better option. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap up, and then I'm going to turn things over to Corinne. But with the next slide, I've just got a few more kind of economic takeaways. Our chief economist, based on your data, is not forecasting a recession for now. Again, he, like me and Corinne, don't love to do forecasts, but our short term, but your data is very reliable, and our short term is showing that while the economy is slower, we're not technically going to go into a recession. And then inflation and wage increases seem to be coming down, which means that the Bank of Canada is signaling that interest rates will stabilize. So they've done 8 consecutive increases, but the last one they were signaling that, you know, they may hold. So that would be a very welcome. That would be very welcome for most. Labor shortages, which we're going to talk a little bit later in the webinar, but obviously that's a challenge for businesses. It's affecting, our survey data is showing it's affecting about half of you, which is much higher than our historical standards. Biggest challenge for personal services, construction, and hospitality. Our optimism is varying across the country, and you can see there which provinces are kind of above, have more businesses who are optimistic than pessimistic, and then which provinces are below. And then I've also got some data there on the most confident sectors, just so you know who's confident. Retail, agriculture, and construction are least confident, and manufacturing and natural resources there are in the middle. If you're a little bit of a like to get geeked out on some of the economic data, our monthly business barometer and our new Main Street Quarterly are really good sources of intelligence. We always say that our data is the non-stock market economy data, and honestly, it tracks closely the GDP. It's very accurate, reliable data, the data we collect from you, because who better to know what's going on than those who have customers who are very in touch with their customers on a daily basis. So with that, that's a real whiz bang, quick economic overview using some of your data. I'm going to turn it over to Corinne to give you an update on some of our key fights. And I think she's going to pull me back up in a minute as we talk about some of this, but I'm going to turn it over to you, Corinne.
Great. Thanks, Laura. And I didn't say it earlier, but I will say it now. Hello, and it's great to be back and have many of you rejoin us or join us for the first time. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're hearing from you and how that's impacting what we're talking about and when we talk to politicians across the country. Of course, my experience is mostly in the Ottawa with the federal government, so I'll be focusing a bit more on that. But heading into 2023, this just came from our very recent survey done just a couple of weeks ago. We asked you, what are your priorities for government to address this coming year? And this is what you told us. Number one overall is to address those rising prices and cost of doing business. Related to that is the overall tax burden. I mean, we have seen both EI and CPP go up at the beginning of this year. We know that carbon taxes are going to go up on April 1st, as well as a bunch of excise taxes that affect mostly the hospitality sector. But it has definitely not been easy. And all of this goes into the cost of doing business. Also, what's important to our members, I'm going to jump over healthcare and come back to that in a second, is labor issues. So labor policies and labor shortages are also top of mind. So I'm going to talk about the cost of business and labor shortages. But I want to come back to healthcare challenges because it's high up on this agenda for you. And it is something that we don't normally address. But this is where I want to bring Laura back up, because we have done a little bit of work now on the healthcare side. We wanted to share with you that I think is pretty exciting and groundbreaking. So Laura, if you're able to rejoin me, that would be great, and talk a little bit about some of the work that you did as part of Red Tape Awareness Week.
Yeah, so as you can see, the third highest priority here is addressing healthcare challenges. And we know about 50% of Canadians either struggle to get a timely appointment with their doctor or don't have a family doctor. So we've got a very serious challenge, and it affects you as business owners, it affects your employees, your families. And we do an annual Red Tape Awareness Week where we award governments really who are doing innovative things. And then we also have a really funny kind of paperweight award. So you might have seen us in the news a couple of weeks ago. But one of the things we did was we looked at what the equivalent patient visits would be if we did a 10% red tape reduction for doctors. And we based this on some work that the Nova Scotia government did, and they're doing some groundbreaking, really great work here. And we found that a 10% reduction in paper burden for doctors, who are also, many of them in family practice, are small business owners, would be the equivalent of freeing up 5.5 million patient visits a year. So governments often talk about spending more money on healthcare, and that very well is likely part of the solution. But we're saying there are other creative things that you can do. And so that's just a quick snapshot. If you're interested in that work, it's on our website. It's on the main page. You can go CFIB-FCEI. But it got a lot of attention a couple of weeks ago. And if you're wondering, that's where it came from.
Great. Thanks, Laura. So we're going to flip to the next slide and talk a little bit about one of the big costs of doing business right now, which is the credit card fees. So this, of course, is something that has only gotten worse throughout the pandemic because so many people flipped from cash to digital payments. Many of them are staying on the digital side. Cash has come back a little bit, but not to the degree it was before. So while overall rates may not have gone up on credit cards, the volume of transactions that many of you are doing through credit cards now has gone up, obviously impacting your costs of acceptance. So this obviously shows you that, consumers and commerce are kind of tied to the credit card industry. They have no real choice sometimes, but to either for merchants to accept them. But there are folks in the background there, the banks and the payment cards networks, that are doing quite well as a result of this increase. So we're trying to address this by seeing if there's a way that we can reduce those fees. So if we go to the next slide, what I want to talk with you about is that we've had some success in this area. CFIB has been working on credit card issues. We're one of the only groups that pushes back on the credit card industry since probably 2008, 2010. We've been continuously trying to get reductions in the credit card fees that are out there. The current government has promised for a number of times to reduce those credit card fees. There was a bit of a reduction introduced in 2020, where the average fee was reduced from 1.5 to 1.4%. And that's just one part of the fee. That's called the interchange fee. You as a merchant will pay the interchange fee plus usually a cut to the processor or the acquirer who gives you the machine, and another cut goes to the credit card companies. Most of that, what they call interchange, which is the biggest rate, actually goes to the banks. So the government in their economic statement last fall did say they were going to negotiate with the credit card industry to reduce transaction fees for small businesses. And that if that was not successful, they would then move on to regulating fees as well. And so this is actually happening right now. There is quite, I would say, avid negotiations going on right now between government and the industry. As well, we are being brought into this particular discussion to get our input and our thoughts on what would be workable and what wouldn't be. So we're very active at this very moment on trying to make sure that a good, solid reduction can take place that actually can help small businesses with their costs today. So moving on to the next slide, what we are pushing for is essentially, and this is based on feedback we got from you through some surveys we just did in the last few weeks, is we're pushing for lowering the total credit card merchant fee. As I said, there are a number of fees within that fee that you pay, and often the focus is only on the interchange, which is a large component, but not the only component. So we want to make sure that all fees combined come out to no more than 1% of that transaction fee. And that's based on your feedback that we're saying that. This would mean, in order for those other components to still get their particular part of this, is that the interchange rate has to go from 1.4 to 0.7. So we're asking for it to be cut in half in order for that rate to be about 1% or less. We feel that that would be substantial, and it would have a good impact on many of you in terms of feeling like you're not paying as much for merchant fees. This is also very much similar to what you'll see in some of the countries where there is regulation. So for example, in Australia, where they actually have regulation, it's actually at 0.8%. So we're trying to get in that realm without going to regulations. And that's because if you go to regulations, that could take years to actually come through the system and actually be felt. We feel this faster if we can get the companies to negotiate and agree to something today, and then hopefully within the next 3 to 6 months get implemented so you can get that particular help now. Associated with this, and Laura, you're coming back up.
Well, I just got a question. Finish the slide, and then there's just a couple of interesting questions on this.
Absolutely. The other two key pieces that we're trying to make sure are also being addressed here is e-commerce rates. So when you do an online transaction, you pay a lot more. And those fees we want to make sure are included in some of this discussion so that those fees are also handled, because there's a lot of motivation to get more small businesses to sell online or get online. And this is one of the big barriers to that. It just costs too much to accept payments online. So we want to make sure that those are kept low. And the other point is we want to make sure that Interac debit is still protected in Canada. It is a low-cost means for our customers to pay you compared to credit cards. And Visa and MasterCard are actually bigger debit players around the world than they are credit card players. And so they really want into that market in Canada. And to do that, they often would find a way to completely eliminate Interac debit. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen, because Visa and MasterCard will charge a lot more for a debit transaction than Interac will. The other piece is the code of conduct. This is something that was created in early 2010. Excuse me. And that actually has brought a bit more power to merchants. So ability to get out of a contract should the actually terms of that contract change more easily than you could have before. And we want to make sure that that stays in place as well. So these are important other features of what we're trying to make sure happens as part of these negotiations.
So, Corinne, a couple of things that kind of around this topic. One, Scott is asking that paying credit cards on collecting government taxes paying those fees on collecting taxes. The PST, GST, and HST is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so he's suggesting that either government should not allow credit card to charge it, or they should give us credit for the fees they pay to collect their revenue. So I know you have something to say about this.
This is a long-standing issue. We have raised it for over a decade. I remember raising it with Minister Jim Flaherty, who has since passed away, unfortunately. And it's a real pain because you're paying those credit card fees on those taxes. Nobody wants to take the hit. The government, we've tried to get the government to take the hit. They're saying, no, not us. The Liberals tried to position it that they would kind of force the credit card companies not to do it. They have since backed off on that. And the changes that are being implemented now, or the discussions happening now, are meant to sort of compensate for that to some degree as well. So we haven't given up this line because I think it is extremely unfair. Anybody you talk to about it will tell you, I can't believe I'm paying a fee on a tax that I have to then submit to government. It makes no sense. But no one is willing at this point to really do anything about it. So we use it as leverage all the time to say how unfair this process is for small merchants. So we'll continue to do that.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to bring up, at the risk of opening a whole other can of worms, is that one of the things that got us into this fight in the first place, and it's well over a decade ago that we were first really alerted to the credit card increases, but was also some of the really unfair behavior of the processing companies locking people into contracts and high fees that are hidden. And that's the credit card code of conduct. But I'm kind of looking, I'm monitoring the chat a little bit, and I think there's still good actors in this space and bad actors in this space. I think when we started, there were some terrible actors. Like we had some real horror stories about companies being locked into contracts that, you know, tens of thousands of dollars to exit them, and ridiculous hidden fees and all of that. I don't know if you want to comment on the good actors, the bad actors, not specifically who they are. I know we have to be careful about that. We do have to be careful about that because they're a little litigious. But just to give people a sense of what to be careful about, what to look out for, and also how our because we have a deal in here as well. We want to be careful that people understand that we do have a deal and why. And I'm going to make the space for it here because it's coming up. And so Stephanie, sorry, I'm doing this like earlier than it was supposed to be in the webinar, but I think it's the right time.
Yeah, well, let me just touch on the first part, of course, and then we can move it over to the Chase piece of it. But there has been a lot of change in this industry over the last decade, and a lot of that had to do with the code of conduct. It really helped to sort of provide some pushback against what I would say were some very unethical types of companies within the industry that were basically frauding people, many small merchants, into thinking they were going to get a certain rate. And then, you know, within 3 months of signing a contract, basically changing that rate. So, and seeing their rates go flying upwards. Also, we've had many other horror stories. Now, the frequency of them has certainly come down. Have they been eliminated? No, we still get some of those on an ongoing basis. And we're going to have Jocelyn also come up afterwards to talk a little bit about some of the resources we have to help. In fact, why don't we go to the next slide, because that is actually where we're going to talk a little bit about our campaign. And as part of the campaign that we put together to help us push the government on this issue is building a credit card hub page. And we're going to get Jocelyn to talk a little bit about that, because included in that is what you can do to help protect yourself, the things that you need to look for when looking for a credit card processor, all the things that we've learned over the last decade to help businesses make sure they're navigating through this in a way that gets them the best deal possible without feeling like they might get themselves into trouble. Because if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. And that's kind of one of the things you have to think about when it comes to the credit card industry. So maybe before I bring Jocelyn up, I'll just put a pitch in for our petition that based on the campaign that we're about to run. We really need your help. This is an extremely active file at the moment. The more petitions that we can get signed over the course of the next 2, 4, 6 weeks will be super helpful. It's targeting both the finance minister as well as the presidents of Visa and MasterCard. pushing them to do something in this area quickly to help you deal with this particular rising cost that's out there. And the time is ripe. This is the opportunity. So we encourage you to sign a petition. There's a link there. You can just go also to our CFIB.ca homepage. The link is right on our homepage as well. If you're going to see your district manager in the next little while, they'll also be asking you to sign this petition. So anything you can do to help would be really welcome. So I'm going to turn it over to Jocelyn, who can talk about some of those resources that could potentially help with some of these things, and then to Stephanie about our deal with Chase. So.
Thank you, Corinne. As Corinne mentioned, we do have a new credit card hub page, which you can access through the link on your slide when you get the deck. And it has the petition. It also has a really interesting advocacy timeline that will show you exactly what CFIB has been doing on this file for the last 10 years. There's lots of tips and tricks on how to deal with your merchant processors, as well as some helpful frequently asked questions. If we look at the next slide, I'm going to show you one of our most popular resources, which is a downloadable poster that simply says, would you consider paying by cash or debit? So these posters can be downloaded and posted at your cash or in your window. And we actually think that a really important part of this is educating consumers and having them understand the difference between paying with their premium credit card versus perhaps their Interact debit or their cash. And as Laura mentioned earlier, I'm part of the business resources team, and business advisors, as many of you know, are the team that works directly with you, our members. And we're positioned to really help you with a lot of those merchant processing questions that you might have. I've seen in the chat, people were asking about different processors, is this one good, or is this good, or how could I get out of my contract? We can actually help you with that. We can help you understand some of the issues that you might be experiencing as a result of your contract, or what you might want to look out for before you do enter a contract. We can kind of help you navigate what some of those fees might be. In the past, there's been a lot of companies that will use different terminology, which can really be confusing because you don't know if you're comparing apples to apples or apples to bananas. So if you need any support in that way, please give Business Resources a call, and we can help you navigate that area.
And Jocelyn, I think it's a good reminder to give you a call if you have, if there are issues just on this sign. We know we've heard from members that putting this at the cash register, close to the cash register, or restaurants have used it sometimes on their tables or even in their menus. That we've had members save significant dollars observing the shift. In fact, this idea came from a member. It was a member who did this and noticed that and shared it with us, and then said, let's make this available to all our members. But do you have any stories about, I'm thinking of one that was like, it was thousands of dollars a month that shifted as a result of just using the sign.
Absolutely. I mean, there's obviously going to be those big transactions, but then there's little transactions as well. I'm a crafter. I frequent a local craft store, and I was speaking to the business owner, and she told me that on certain products, very popular little spools of thread, she actually loses money every time someone pays with a credit card. And so after we had that conversation and I went to put my purchase together, obviously I grabbed my method of payment and then instantly kind of had a recall back, and I'm like, actually, no, I think I'm going to pay with debit for this one, even though that wasn't my habit. So it changes behaviors. And, I had that conversation, of course, knowing who, from the work that I've done at CFIB, but that sign, I actually told her, hey, you should download this sign from CFIB. It could have that conversation with a lot more of our members. So I think little purchases, big purchases, it can make ultimately a big change in your bottom line.
Great.
So I just wanted, before we pass it on to Stephanie, I just wanted to reiterate, also having read through some of the comments now in the chat and so forth, about if you have a question about a process so that you're working with, you're unsure, as Jocelyn said, call the advisors. They're used to these questions. They know what to look for in these contracts. They can tell you what you may want to ask some more questions about, or what you may want to reconsider. So yes, we have seen a lot of these contracts over the years, and we can really guide you in the right direction in terms of, so whether it's Chase, which we hope that you'll consider, or another one, we're happy to try to help you through that process. So,
and Corinne, I think that's an important thing you just said, that whether it's Chase, which we hope you will consider. And the reason for that is that, of course, we've worked hard to read that contract. It doesn't mean Chase is perfect, but there are a couple of things that, first of all, you know, we've read that contract very carefully and negotiated hard on your behalf to get a good deal with Chase, including not having the fine print that won't let you get out of the contracts, or that creates challenges down the road. But I also want to be really clear that we're not pushing them. We're just saying they're a good one to consider, but we know we've also given people advice. If you're considering something else, you could use our Chase deal to negotiate with that. Like, we don't have a vested, we don't have a strong vested interest in you going with Chase. Our interest is getting you the best advice so you can make good decisions on behalf of your business. That may or may not mean Chase, but we think it's a good product. So I just want to be clear and careful with that. Also, if you have problems with Chase, you can come to our advisors, and we have good lines of
well, that's Stephanie's team, so we should bring Stephanie up.
Yeah, sorry, Stephanie, I'm skipping you.
And as Stephanie gets ready to talk a little bit about Chase, I also wanted to just make a point that, and Stephanie and I work closely together. Part of what I do is federal legislative work, but I also work closely with Stephanie on the partnership side. And one of the things we do with every one of our partners, including Chase, is we make it clear to them that even though we may partner with them, that does not preclude us from being able of us lobbying against them or the industry that they represent. So that's actually written into all our contracts. So they have no choice but to sort of watch us go after the credit card companies when it comes to these issues. And frankly, Chase, we've been partnered with them for many years, and they're used to us doing this and support it in the background. So maybe I shouldn't say they support it, but they certainly don't say anything in terms of what we're doing. And of course, they continue to try to do their best for our membership. So over to you, Stephanie, and a little bit about our Chase partnership.
Definitely. And I guess everyone can see here this great collaboration we have going on. All of us are so passionate about this great work. You see how our lobbying team is working hard on this fight on the credit card file, our business advisors as well. So where I come in on the savings department is that negotiating skill, right? It's ensuring that when it comes to, if you have to accept Visa, MasterCard, American Express, that you get a discounted rate for the acceptance of those cards. We even have Interact reduced rates. And as we've shared, our partner for payment processing is Chase. They're now called Chase Payment Solutions. You may have known them in the past as Chase Merchant Services, Chase Payment Tech, but all of this has been exclusively negotiated for you. We've kept you in mind. We've ensured that all of the rates that are available are transparent. They're clear, that there are different pricing models. If you want something simple, just one bundled rate, we've got it. If you want to see compared to what the interchange rates are on the Visa and MasterCard website, there's a small fee that we've negotiated with Chase that is added on. And when it comes to Interact, we've also reduced that to just 3 cents per transaction. So if you're a business that accepts payment in store, or if you're on the go, or if you have online transaction, again, as we know, that has increased since the pandemic, there's a solution that is suited for your business. So don't hesitate. Know that in the work we've done, we've really protected you to make sure that there's not going to be any sign-up fees, no hidden fees. And if you change your mind and you want to cancel, we've even put in a clause that protects you from any cancellation fees. So trust that we've definitely kept you in mind in doing so. As Laura and the team mentioned, we're not here to force you, but we're here to remind you that we've done that work. And if you are wondering, should you consider Chase, certainly give them a call. They have a dedicated line that you can speak to someone that knows CFIB. But if you're not yet ready to speak to them, my team are called Savings Specialists, and I'll speak a little bit more about what they do later, but they are also there to help you along the way.
Stephanie, I think Ken has an interesting challenge, and these challenges obviously with big companies come up. Mm-hmm. He's been trying to get a copy of his original contract with Chase to provide it for class action settlement. And he's recorded 5 specific dates and times where he's been told he would receive it within 48 hours and still no contract received. So it's challenges like these that I think we can put it in a different escalation line, Ken. And you're saying Chase was recommended by CFIB ? And I totally get why that would be a question. But any big company with these big volumes, they're going to have some customer service challenges. Like I have yet to encounter a big company that doesn't have some serious customer service challenges from time to time. So we're certainly not here to say that Chase is perfect, but we do have an escalation route, and we will, and we do read them the riot act about customer service to our members on a regular basis to make sure that we keep that as high as possible.
I think the key there, Laura, yeah, and you've got it. And I think the key there is to identify that you are a member of CFIB, right? We've negotiated a specific plan for our members, and that includes this escalation process. So give us a call. We'll be happy to escalate it up the ladder for you and see about getting you the contract.
Great. And I am just going to put one more from Denise to you, Stephanie. I don't know if you've heard anything about Chase is done with all the VX machines and the new upgrade machine and upping the cost by $5 a machine to $40. I'm just curious whether you have any. You may not.
I have a little bit. So from time to time, Chase will go through an overhaul of their machines that they would consider to be obsolete. They have launched just last year a new device, which is on this slide here, the middle one, which is the DX8000, giving some of the merchants the option to switch over. As a member of CFIB, again, if you have identified that you are a member and you are on our plan that we have negotiated with Chase, there is a discount on that higher fee that you are paying for that new terminal. So it may be a bit of a higher cost to your business, but that device is really there to allow numerous types of payment acceptance. And because you're a member, you'll see a discount. So if you have any questions, as always, feel free to give us a call before you get back to Chase. We'll be happy to guide you.
And just a comment from Des in the chat that he switched from Global Payments to Chase about a year ago, and now paying $600 to $750 a month compared to the $1,500 to $1,700 before. So for some businesses, it can be a very good deal. We obviously not for everybody, and you want to do those comparisons and do your homework, but it's a good option to at least have a look at. And with that, I think Stephanie was that your content? There may be some other questions that you can answer in the background, and we're going to start talking, I think, about a little bit more about labor shortages.
Yeah, so that's over to me, I think. So the other big issue that's been coming up a lot, both in the priorities we heard from through our surveys, as well as through the questions that came in prior to this webinar, is the labor shortages. So this has been another very active file for us right across the country. At the federal level, we've been active on all of these fronts. This is the type of thing we've been lobbying governments for to help you deal with labor shortages. And I'm going to have my colleagues, Jocelyn and Stephanie, come up with practical ways also that we can help with labor shortages. But just to give you a sense of the things we're pushing for. So we're asking governments to help with things like automation. Automation is on this list because when we asked you, our members, about what are the most effective ways to help you deal with labor shortages, about a third of our members said they had tried investing in automation. And of those that did, 80% of them said it helped deal with their labor shortages. So if there's like a software you can buy, or there's some efficiencies or production efficiencies you can put into your particular company, it could even be just a customer relationship management system that allows you to sort of maybe have one less person doing some of the work. All of those things could be included. So we feel that the government should be extending something called the accelerated capital cost allowance, which allows you to more quickly write down an expense in the year of purchase, but also this other new measure called the immediate expensing of up to $1.5 million in the year of purchase. Both of these are temporary measures the government put in place in the last couple of years as a means to help stimulate capital investment coming out of COVID. However, they both start disappearing in 2024. And so we want to make sure that they extend them or even make them permanent, so there's more motivations to make these capital investments to help you deal with some of these labor shortages if it makes sense for your company. Another area is immigration. I know there were some questions around this. It's definitely a massive part of where new labor is coming from in Canada. It's complicated though. It needs to be streamlined and simplified. The temporary foreign worker program and the labor market impact assessment programs, again, both considered very effective by those that have used them. However, they're complicated and difficult to get through. There have been a number of adjustments made to the temporary foreign worker program that have made it a bit more accessible, that have been successful. Some of those are actually starting to be removed in April. We're going to lobby for government to keep them in place so that, again, if this is an option that could work for your company, hopefully we can find ways to make it easier to access. Training is always good because you can sometimes find the people, but they don't have the skills. So we want to make sure government is looking at ways to help deal with the cost of training. One example could be giving you a holiday on EI for that employee that you're training. So you can use the money you would normally pay for them for EI to invest in the training of that individual as you bring them up to speed for your company. And finally, the fourth area that was actually identified by you as being quite effective is recruiting retired workers. We had a lot of retirements throughout the end of COVID. A lot of people just decided they weren't going to go back. Many of them may still be able to work and want to work, but because of the incentives we have in place, it just doesn't make sense for them, because if they're getting old age security already, it starts clawed back after a certain amount. Finding ways to incent some of those retired workers to come back. Another thing is, why are we asking them to pay EI? If they're over a certain age or they're already getting a pension and this is to supplement that, maybe we don't ask them to pay EI anymore. So those are some of the things we're looking at from a government perspective to help address some of those labor shortages, which will likely remain with us for quite some time. I think somebody else pointed that out in the chat as well. Canada's demographics are not the best in terms of our aging population. So this is something we need to have really good strategic initiatives that will help us deal with this issue going forward. So on that, I am going to turn it over to Jocelyn, who is going to give you some practical ways that we can maybe help you deal with your labor shortages as well.
As mentioned, that our team of business advisors are help members directly, and just as our surveys kind of lead our lobbying action, our advocacy action, calls from you actually help us develop the tools that would be helpful to you. And I'm sharing here today that we actually have a lot of popular human resource policies. And especially if you're in the position of hiring, we have templates and policies that start all the way from the job ad, so before you hire, right onto the employment contract and the onboarding of that new employee. Our most popular hiring templates are our job description template, our basic interview questions, which are here on the screen, and also we have a letter of offer, which can be used as an employment contract. All of these templates, I believe there's over 45 of them now, are accessible on our members exclusive part of the website. So we really encourage you to log in there and look around. You can find these as well as popular employee management tools, which I think are very important. John just mentioned that he had almost a 25% absenteeism rate last fall and into the Christmas holiday. We hear every day about lots of sick leaves, lots of employee absences, and some of these tools are meant to kind of help clarify the expectations that you have as an owner to your employees, and also give you a paper trail if you ever find yourself in a difficult situation with an employee, and let's say, for example, the Ministry of Labor or Employment Standards. Some of these tools would be, for example, an employee support and development plan, which you can use for growth and development, but you can also use if an employee is struggling. We have an attendance policy, we have an employee code of conduct. So there's lots of things in there, and I do invite you to explore them. And we're going to actually take a little moment also and then talk about retention, because there's we can't find employees part of the labor shortage, but then there's the how do we keep employees part of the labor shortage as well. So retention, one of the number one things that we've realized in the last year or so is that you really have to think outside the box, and having to fill the same position more than once in a year or ever can be very frustrating, and it's going to impact productivity, team morale, and it's actually going to affect your bottom line. Because labor shortages are so prevalent, we wanted you to think about retention as something that starts at the very beginning of the hiring journey. And it's more than offering the higher salary. Actually, we've discovered that given the right mix of employee centered incentives, along with a healthy workplace, a lot of employees will choose to stay. And on the screen, there's a list of things that you can do, like have flexible work arrangements, or it could be flexible shifts. Sometimes it's not possible if your business is open for specific hours, but sometimes it can be made to work. Public transportation vouchers, or parking, or get-togethers, recognition. An excellent safety record goes a long way, believe it or not. That's really important to a lot of people. But also respectful workplace culture and growth and development opportunities. I think it's really important to never underestimate the power of a compliment. I know that sounds so simple, but I know Laura and I were having a discussion. We have teenage daughters that work in small businesses, and nothing gives them more pride than being told that they're doing a good job and making sure that they know that they're valuable to your business. And it's a great way to show appreciation to them. So never underestimate the power of a compliment. And again, one of the biggest things that employees are looking for is a workplace that they can be respected in and where they can grow. And we found that workplaces that have consistent, clear, transparent expectations that involve their employees in decision-making is highly valued by employees. So that's where some of these policies come in place, because it does set out those clear, transparent expectations. It also makes things fair. There's a lot of simple things that you can do to support yourself and your employees at work around wellness. I'm just going to sidestep and give a plug to our wellness hub that is on CFIB-FCEI/wellness. We have policies such as a respectful workplace policy, and on the screen we have the companion poster. And we also have different strategies on how you can reduce stress, tension, improve employee morale, which in turn will support retention in your workplace. Growth and development, I also mentioned, are key in retention. I'm actually going to bring Stephanie back to speak about how your CFIB membership can help you by using some of our savings partners.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. I was in the back answering a few questions that came up from the last topic that we had. But definitely, another way that you can attract and retain your employees is by offering these additional benefits, something that provides a bit of support and helps employees feel fulfilled and having that sense of accomplishment. So for times when you need to offer training, for example, our partnership with ViewBiz offers you a suite of courses that are free of charge. There's actually over 50 online courses at a value of about $2,000, and they cover categories such as compliance, health and safety, and customer relations, just to mention a few. So in an example where you have an employee that just completed the WMIS training, when they do that, they will be able to receive a certificate. They'll have their name on it, and they can add that to their resume. Another example is the customer relations. We've heard a lot from our members that it's important for them to provide that employee development training. And in the customer relations training, that's where this information can be found. We also have given, through our negotiations with ViewBiz, access to discounted certificate programs. So these are for those employees that are aspiring to reach a higher position within your business, or those that just want to go through management training, with topics ranging from small business management to small business marketing and sales. Just as examples again, these programs are accredited by the University of Athabasca, which is an online university. And the employees can also obtain credits that can then be used towards a Bachelor of Commerce. So knowing the importance of training, we wanted to share this partnership with you. So feel free to visit the site. Again, you can call our team if you have questions about what are the courses that are available that you and your employees can participate. On the other side, knowing the importance of wellness, the plug that Jocelyn just made on that, wellness in the workplace, employee wellness, the list is long. We have a group health partnership with Primasure. They're also our main sponsor of our wellness hub. And when you have an offering for group benefit, it really gives you a competitive edge. in this labor market, you want to find ways that you can attract these employees, and once you've hired them, retain them. So these programs are underwritten by Sun Life Insurance, and it provides you with access, and for your employees as well, to flexible and affordable plans. So this includes life insurance, dental coverage, health spending account, and even telemedicine, where you can video in a nurse or a doctor where you have an issue. And this is a coverage that was really keeping members in mind when we negotiated this, because we understand that some of you may be sole proprietors or may only have 1 or 2 employees. So these plans actually cater for those smaller businesses. So again, these are just examples of some of the ways that we've really leveraged our cloud of our 97,000 members. We have many other partners that we have negotiated with, and I'll show you on the next slide here what it is that we've done when it comes to negotiations, right? We understand that you're good. You can probably get a lot of this on your own, but for those instances where it may be very difficult to negotiate, you can count that we've done that heavy lifting. If you pick just 1 or 2 of our savings partners, you can actually see some savings of $5,000 or more a year. And in the chat, I included some comments to share that you can compare your rates with that of another partner, just to make sure that you're in fact getting the best rate. So trust us, we've done the heavy lifting. And if you have any issues, you can give us a call. We've put our number here. Our specialists will be happy to help, or of course, you can email us as well. So I'm aware of time, so I'll stop here and pass it on to the next person.
Thanks. I think we're at the point where we're talking about our upcoming. So we're really excited about our webinar on cybercrime in your business. We actually had a call with some folks from the RCMP and Homeland Security just before this webinar to talk about whether it would be a good fit. And I'm pretty excited because they're a little bit deeper on not just how to protect your business, but what to do if you actually have an incident. And they were saying that this is really not, I said a lot of people think that this is more of a big business issue, and they were saying no. Small businesses need to be worried about this as well. So I think that's going to be a great one. And I think, Jocelyn, were you going to come up and say just a quick word in ending about the cybersecurity? We've got some cybersecurity tools that we've launched as well. And I think we're skating close to the finish line, but I can give you 2 minutes to go through this.
I just basically wanted to let you guys know that we have launched a cybersecurity academy, which is free cybersecurity training for you and your employees. We currently have 6 courses featured. I have them listed there on the screen, but they include everything from cyber basics. We even have a course about credit cards and chargebacks, disputes and merchant rights, which I think after viewing this webinar would be a very interesting topic for most of you to look at. In addition to the lessons, the Academy features templates that are valued at over $5,500. So we're strongly encouraging you to explore the Academy, which we hope will help protect your business from a cyber attack, and that you join us on our next webinar. It says that 90% of all cyber attacks are a result of human error, but the good news is that with proper education and awareness, that many of those cyber attacks can be prevented. And I would want to give one more plug to our cybersecurity contest for any learner, so that's you or any of your individual employees that completes the cybersecurity courses. You get an entry into a draw, which the grand prize is $10,000. And there's also 11 regional prizes of $500 to be won as well. So you have lots of time to complete your lessons by March 31st. And if you need more information, we would be happy to share that with you through Business Resources.
And it's interesting, we've actually had a partner on our Cybersecurity Academy. MasterCard has been a good partner. There are a lot of bigger businesses have a strong incentive to make sure that small businesses are also have the right protections in place, because anyway, it all works out so that we can offer great prizes and great content, and it's all good. But I would definitely encourage you to check that out. And I think it's going to be a good webinar. Those guys were really interesting, weren't they, Jocelyn? I think you're one of the main contacts, and you brought them to the table. And we always do a lot of vetting before we put people in front of you. You are members, and they were really interesting. I could have talked to them for another hour. They were full of interesting information. Okay, I'm going to bring us home, and usually I give my colleagues just a quick second to say goodbye. So I'm going to do that. And while we're doing that, you can see our number and how to get the most out of your membership, some basic tips here. But if Stephanie, Jocelyn, and Corinne want to come up, I'll just give you a moment to say goodbye to everyone. I'll start with you, Stephanie, then I'll go to Corinne and Jocelyn, and then I'll wrap us up.
Always a pleasure to be with you. I know how hard all of you work, and know that we're doing just the same on the back end to save you those hard-earned dollars. So don't hesitate and reach out if ever you come across any questions. Thank you again.
And Corinne?
Sorry, I lost my mute button there for a sec. Yeah, thanks everybody once again for joining us. I know it was a lot of information, so hopefully if there are questions, feel free always to call us. As Stephanie said, we're happy to help. I'm going to put a plug in for the credit card campaign. If you also believe it's important, please check out our petition, sign it, and send it along. It's going to be super important over the next few weeks because this is an active file. And also, if you can find the time, we'd also appreciate you filling out our surveys as they come to you, because they are incredibly important in our lobbying work. And so we hope that you can help us out on that front as well. So thanks again for joining us.
And Jocelyn?
Yeah, I'm just going to echo all the thanks. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. And I really hope to see you next time on the cybersecurity webinar.
Yeah, me too. And it looks like some people are already signing the petitions. Corinne is going to be thrilled about that. And thank you all for everything you do. I know it's February, so I can't really say Happy New Year anymore, but we're really, really happy to see you and to launch season 2 of our webinar series. We'll be back soon. Don't hesitate to let us know if there are certain topics you'd like us to cover as well. And we'll try and keep it really relevant and timely. I know we covered a lot today, but hopefully you took something out of it, and we love doing these, so we'll see you again soon. Thanks everyone, and with that we'll end the webinar.